Hey folks, today with me I have Domagoj, and we'll talk about setting up your engineering business, a bit about academia. I'm sure it will be fun. Hey mate, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to be here. Thank you for your time,
yeah.
for having me here.
Sure, it's my pleasure. I guess you have some questions, so we can, jump right into it.
Sure. First of all, one of my colleagues was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, he's off due to connectivity issues. So actually, it's two of us thinking about something, some new path for two of us. We are both at the end of our PhDs. We are doing structural mechanics, actually structural mechanics in ceramics. So mostly fracture simulations and some advancements in that field. And now with this specific knowledge set that we obtained, we were thinking about offering, so to say, service on the market. And a lot of questions comes in mind thinking about this step, obviously. So maybe just for a relaxed start, could you tell us what brought you to this career? And in this way, how did you handle the end of your PhD?
Okay, so I feel that there are two parts to this answer. The first part is that my father has a PhD and he has his own company. Mm-hmm. So if you would ask me at primary school what I will do, I would tell you that I will do my PhD and open my company.
All right.
I was raised to be a businessman in some sense. So it was very easy for me to make this decision because I kind of always knew that I will do it anyway. So there was no breaking point, no aha moment. It just was part of my life from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. This is how I was raised. Well, maybe not raised, but I observed my father, and it was like a natural choice for me in some sense. So when I started my PhD, I started my first company literally 3 months before I started the PhD. So I finished the normal, regular bachelor's, master's, and then I opened my company during summer, and at the beginning of the next semester in autumn, I started a PhD.
All right.
If you want to start your company and do a PhD, don't start both at the same time. It's a bad idea. But, I thought, I can do it. And, well, actually I did, but it's like 14-hour days, 7 days a week. You don't want that, right? But so starting off the career, it was very easy choice for me. So that's that.
All right.
And when it comes to finishing academia career, let's say, when I finished my PhD, I was hired at my faculty to be like a scientist lecturer. This is like a standard thing in Poland.
Yeah.
And I worked there together with my PhD time for a decade. And I feel that I completely overslept the time where I should leave. When I was starting my first company, doing a PhD and then working at the university gave me at least semblance of steady income. It was like universities here don't pay all that well. I guess that my wife working in IT helped me much more with finances than my job at university. But still, this was the part that allowed me to kind of, have something to eat, let's say.
Yeah. Some stability.
But then my company developed, and universities start getting in a way of working because, it takes a lot of time.
Sure.
And I was thinking like, maybe I should quit it. But at the same time, it's a steady pay. You don't know how the business will go. And you kind of like, you tend to stay in a situation you're in. And it took me many, many years to realize that I should quit academia. And there wasn't any particular like aha moment again. I simply think that I grew up to the point to realize I don't want to work at university anymore.
All right.
And when I left, I made a small party. I invited everybody to coffee and cake and asked my friends, why do you stay here? And many of them were unable to tell me why. It's like academia is like, you just get used to it, I guess, and you're staying. So the fact that you're considering leaving it early, and this, it sounds reasonable to me. Yeah, in some sense, yeah. And I I was leaving academia in a very bizarre way because I have 4 kids. And this means that you can have like a parental leave in Poland. So I like use this, and I haven't. I quit academia, but I was still employed. Of course, they didn't pay me anything, but I could get back. I took like 3-year holiday to raise your child effectively. So I gave myself this time to see if the business will grow up. And eventually that I can get back if anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
But after 3 months, I was certain that I won't go.
All right.
But
okay,
it was,
this is a nice circumstances actually.
Absolutely. Wife in IT is such a beautiful thing to have, especially since she's such a beautiful girl, but also because like you won't starve when you're starting a business. And
so
let's be honest, like starting a company is tough.
Is to find a good proper wife doing a stable job.
Well, not having a wife at all and living somewhere in a basement, being able to live off relatively low money would work as well.
All right.
But if you have like a family and you're the person in your household who brings most of the money, then quitting a job and starting a company might be very difficult because let's be honest, it's risky. You have to be aware that especially at the start, this is not like a dream. And I think that this is like having a savings, for instance, that will sustain you for like quite significant amount of time. That would be needed.
What's the significant amount of time?
I would say that when I started my company for the first year, we basically earn a little bit of money from time to time. That would be an honest opinion. Back then I was getting my PhD scholarship because I was still a PhD student. So I get some income. Ella was working, so she got income. So together we can easily sustain ourselves. But if I would be alone for the first year, I would mostly live from whatever university gave me, plus like a bonus present money, realistically, from a company every time we got something to do.
All right.
And my first regular salary at the company started like 1.5 years after we set it up, maybe like 2 years. Somewhere between 1.5 and 2 years, I think. So that was the time when my company was doing good enough to pay me any money every month, regardless if we got a job or not.
Sure.
So basically, when you start a business, the idea is that you put a lot of money on a stockpile, and you hope that this stockpile of money will grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
So you have this pile of money to pay yourself, regardless if the company is currently earning or not. And this part of the business is difficult. And now, as I have like a year of payroll in a bank account, like whether I get any job this month or not is not an issue. I just pay out from the stockpile, and every time we earn money, I put them on the stockpile. It's way easier this way.
I'm interested if this position of yours, while still being at uni, being a professor teaching over there, helped you anyhow in growing the business, like getting some clients or some getting industry in this through this channel.
Well, if anything, I have good friends at university. So every time I search for an employee for my company, I could call them and say, hey, do you have good 5-year students that you can recommend for me to hire?
Yeah.
This is like the best recruiting tool you will ever get. So this has tremendous value, like recruiting people off the market, let's say. It's a nightmare when you can do that from university, and you have people there you trust, or you are there yourself there. Finding a proper hire is a very good thing. So while at the beginning this won't be your worry, because like when you start a business you most likely won't hire people, this is a benefit and it cannot be overlooked. How this is set up in Poland is also that when I was employed at university, I didn't have to pay some of the health insurance things from my company. So it kind of saved a little bit of money. I don't know if this is the same in Czech Republic. I think that it's common, right? So that helped financially as well in some sense, at least at the beginning, because later on the amount of money you save is not so significant. And when it comes to getting business, I would say that this didn't help. Sure, you go, for instance, to scientific conferences, right? So you can network and meet people.
Yeah.
But most of those people are scientists. They, even if they run businesses, they would be your competitors, not
Sure.
potential customers.
Yeah.
So I would say that in this regard, this doesn't work all that well. However, I am a civil engineer, and I know that in some other fields, big jobs come to universities, and then you can kind of be sub-hired by your university to do a portion of a big scientific task.
Yeah.
And you are well equipped as a
Yeah,
PhD
yeah.
to do that. So in my faculty, this rarely happened, if at all. But I can imagine faculties that help you this way, that they understand, they know you, they understand you have a business, there is like a big grant or some research project from industry to do, and they hire you to help them out, right? Yeah, I can imagine that. Of course, if you are an employee of that faculty, maybe they will hire you first instead of someone from outside. But if you've been there, you know the people, then maybe this would help. It hasn't helped me. Yeah, it haven't helped me personally, but you know your faculty perfectly, you know the people there. So this is something to consider, for sure. I have a friend who actually get part of his job, industrial job, from university, but mostly because he developed like a very unique technology of doing something, and now company that want to do that simply hire him to design this technology for him. So I can imagine that this would work, although it was never my plan. I mean, universities are like, they are not private entities. They are national in some sense.
Yeah.
I much rather work in an actual private business. So being on the market, let's say. And in this case, at least Polish universities rarely would help you because the decision chain is very long. They take a lot of time to do anything, and the actual business usually don't have that much time to push the papers around through the university. So they would come to you directly. And with this direct contact, having a PhD helps because, I can say, hey, I have a PhD, I know what I'm doing, and this means something, at least to some people.
Yeah.
But being associated with university, I don't think that it would help. At least it didn't help me.
All right. That's a very good remark. You maybe didn't have this experience, what I'm aiming for with this question, but maybe we'll have a good insight. Do you think that having a relevant industrial experience after PhD, getting to work in some company, is a good idea? So would it be better to finish after finishing PhD, go to work for a company, let's say for your company, and then starting a business in a year or 2 or 3 after getting a feeling of how the market works and how these things are developing?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really do that. I mean, when I was a student, like a regular master student, at the last year of university, I actually worked at a company. This is very popular in Poland. The last year of studies in civil engineering isn't very hard, so you actually have time to at least part-time work somewhere. So I did that. Did it help me? Well, it comes down to what you know about work in general, not necessarily even getting skills, but rather like work ethic that you have to, wake up in the morning, go do something, stuff like that. But what I would consider is having skills. And I spend a lot of time learning nonlinear FEA, for instance. That's the thing that I do in my business. What helped is I was skilled in this. I know how to do this. So some people may require, to take a course or go to a job to learn how to do stuff. I was blessed because, as I told you, my father has a company. So while I never worked there, and we live in a different town, so I could still call him up and say, hey, I'm doing this or that. What do you think? And it's not that he solves it for me, but at least having somebody with more experience to give you like a second opinion or something.
A good advice.
Both business-wise and technically, that would be something interesting, right? So I feel like... for instance, I have a nonlinear course where we have bi-weekly office hours, and people come, and very often they would ask me business advice and technical advice on something they're doing. So having like a resource where you can have a friend, a colleague, maybe a family member, or like, you sign up to my course or whatever, then asking somebody else who has more experience what they think will help you avoid early mistakes. Because if I make a mistake now of trusting somebody I shouldn't trust, or making a deal that will be bad for me, this is not a risk anymore. I will be fine. Yeah. But at the beginning, this can very easily pull you under. At the beginning, understanding what you're doing technically, you have to avoid mistakes. Like the mistake now would be as costly for me as at the beginning. Most likely, we're doing so expensive stuff in terms of if I make a mistake and somebody comes to me and say, hey, you did it wrong, you owe us money. That's more money than my company is worth, because the sums very quickly go crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be perfectly understanding what you're doing and having somebody, especially at the beginning, who tell you, wait, mate, this is not how it's done. Like, pay attention to this, look at that, think about that. Mm-hmm. That would be important. Yeah. So working somewhere can give you that. But at the same time, when I hire people, I don't hire people who worked somewhere else. I always hire people from directly after studies, because I am afraid that they worked somewhere where they gain wrong habits. They were taught wrongly, and that's a risk. When you go to a company that, let's say, does subpar job, how would you tell at the beginning? You don't know that, right? And then they can actually teach you to ignore stuff or do it wrongly or plain guessing. And then you kind of inherit bad habits from them. Yeah. That could be very detrimental. So if I would be choosing first industrial job, it's not about the money you earn, it's about people you work with and what they do, because this will set you on a certain trajectory.
Sure.
And to me, like, if you would be able to find a good job that will teach you real deep stuff, then going there for a year or two might actually be reasonable, just so you get the good habits and good knowledge and know-how and things like that. However, will you be able to find such an office? And will you be able to assess whether the situation you're in is a good situation or not? That's a difficult part.
Yeah,
and it's not obvious that you could. Sure. Because when I was a student, I wouldn't be able to recognize if what my boss is telling me to do is how it is supposed to be done.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. You are too green, basically, to make this educated understanding. Yeah.
And then somebody can say, look, I know that university, they taught you to, check Buckley, but in real industry, we'll never do it, right?
We heard it so many times. All right, now to more specific questions, business-wise. The biggest, so to say, fear or interest that we have, or a biggest question mark would be how to target clients, how do you approach market, especially in the beginning. Now you already have a reputation, so some things go with the flow. You already have a traction of this. In the beginning, I see many people are doing some sort of examples, some sort of a free education that basically grabs the eye of the viewer, then doing some LinkedIn posts or some blogs. This is a way to go in some way, but do you have any advice on this topic?
Okay, Domagoj, I will break your heart, man.
Yeah.
I had the same conversation with my father 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said, look, kiddo, I have no idea how I did it. And the reality is, I don't have an idea how I did it either. And it's such a weird thing that, you can't use like advertisements in radio or TV or something. That doesn't work, right? Yeah. So I can tell you from my experience what does work and what doesn't work, but I'm afraid that you won't like it. But it's the honest truth as I see it.
All right.
So doing your best, even if you're underpaid, seemed to me that it worked. The idea is that at the beginning, you take any job. Yeah. Man, I had a PhD in shell stability, and I was designing handrails on staircases because this was the job I could put my hands on.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you just do whatever to survive, and that's honest truth.
Yeah.
But and of course, those jobs, while designing handrails was actually well paid because it was a job from another country that paid better. But regardless how much they pay and what you do, always do your best. I always wrote the best reports I could. I always did my best. Not because those people who employed me at the beginning cared. They didn't care at all. But your reports travel the world.
Yeah.
This guy who do those handrails will have to submit your report to someone higher up, and they can open the report and say, "Hey, that's actually a good job." And they won't call you. I mean, come on, they will never do it instantly. But in a year, in 5, maybe your report will end up somewhere else. Somebody will look at it and say, "Hey, those guys know what they are doing. Let's call them."
Sure.
So having your name and address and like phone number in every report is important, but at the same time, doing the best and describing well what you're doing. The description takes time. You need to write down what you were thinking, how to do it, and so on. So people who read your report actually can see your expertise behind your work. That would be something that works. But imagine how slowly this develops. At the beginning, you don't have customers. So you hope to fish anything, and then you get the job, do it. Maybe in 3 years, somebody will reach out. Like, yeah, great. Now that's a marketing strategy right there, right? Yeah. So then you hope to grab another job and another job. Starting was very difficult. And, my father had a company. So from time to time, he would throw us a low-paid job out of scraps just so we can have something to eat in some sense,
Yeah.
So that was never a substantial amount of work in some sense, but at least allowed us a foothold to do something. So having at least some vague idea where you can get a cheap, badly paid job to do at the beginning, it's already very good. It's a good start. If you don't know anything, I wouldn't even start a company. I would rather start searching for customers. And, you can reach out to people on LinkedIn or even directly call them or go to their office if they are local and talk with them. What I, however, think does not work is doing blogging and like writing the tutorials that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like I have a very popular blog, like tens of thousands of people visit it every month. And those are not my customers. Those are people who wish. Those are people who wish to do what I do. So, if anything, those are my competitors.
Yeah.
Right. And through the history of my blog, I've been doing this for many years now. I admit I got some work. It's not that it was zero. Sometimes, like once 2 years maybe, somebody will write to me on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, mate, I see that you're doing this. Could you help me with this, that, whatever, yada, yada." It rarely works, but it did work in the past.
2 times, okay.
What works better, way better, is people recommending me. So I very often get a phone saying, "Hey, the guy from this company you did work for called, he's a friend of mine, and I talked with him, and he recommended you."
Yeah.
So, but again, it takes years to build. Exactly. It's a process. So blogging and writing tutorials will not help you. And in the first few years, I haven't landed a single gig this way when we talk about design. However, a few years into my business, I realized that I waste a lot of time. There were months where we had nothing to do, so we would come to the company and, watch YouTube videos or play computer games, waiting for a miracle, essentially. And I realized that this is dumb. So that was one of the reasons. There are many reasons I started blogging, but I could. So I started writing posts and stuff, firstly out of frustration and boredom and maybe my love to the field. But essentially I realized that, hey, maybe I can earn on that. So I started teaching people. And now the followers of my blog, I told you, they are not my customers. Well, they are my customers, but they are customers for a second business that does training and stuff. Yeah. So essentially and literally, I have 2 companies. One does the design and one does the training.
All right.
So it's a completely different business, but at the beginning you do whatever you can, man. If I would have to completely start over today, I would try to reach out to somebody who is organizing like some sort of events for professionals. Go there and network with them. I would search maybe for like, I don't work in fracture mechanics, so I don't really know what the industrial application is, but there must, let's say that these are parts of machines. There must be like annual meetings of machines manufacturers that do that. And you can try to go there and talk with those people, ask what problems you have, what you can solve. That kind of things would be
That's a very good
the
advice,
beginning. And also, I've heard, although I haven't done it myself, but I know a guy who did, you can go abroad, preferably to a rich country, with a big company that works in your field, work in that company for a year or two, and then say, hey, I am going back to home. I will start my business there, but I can still do what I'm doing. You want to be my clients. And if you have like a good reputation and stuff, it would be like a slower thing to do. And, for like if you have a family moving abroad for 2 years, it's not necessarily life equal, right? Like it would throw your life upside down essentially. But if you're single and you're still like developing your career, that could be a smart move. But of course, at the end, they can say, no, we're not interested. And then it didn't work. So there is a high risk, but the potential, the reward is huge because you can start your company with a customer who knows you, trusts you, and you can hope in having jobs from them. That would be a big benefit, right? But it's a risky strategy, but I've heard about a guy who did that, and he has a company and it worked for him. So, at least something to consider.
Like that. So in the beginning, basically, you were targeting companies wherever you could find anything, calling them, trying to reach out. So it was a substantial time of you invested basically in trying to find a job. How is it these days?
Well, I can't honestly say that at the beginning I was super active marketing-wise. It was so stressful to me, like. I have Asperger's. I'm not very good with people. So calling somebody I don't know, I made total of 7 cold calls in my entire life. And that was for a live event I did like a few years ago, and I was searching for companies to hire them to hire me to teach them. And I said like an event, and I made a total of 7 cold calls, and I hope to never do it again.
All right.
So I can't, like, I was more like sitting on and hoping for the best, waiting for people to reach out to me, which is a wonderful marketing strategy. I can tell you, but it hasn't changed much since then. It's only that people reach out way more often.
Reputation did the job. Actually.
Reputation and the previous jobs, very often people recommend me. I am kind of well known for doing nonlinear FEA. So people recommend me. They see my reports. Like, let's say I did the calculations for a customer. They has to be submitted. Somebody else read it through and say, whoa. I had people who are reviewers. Like if you design pressure vessels, there are companies that review designs. You have to have approval. And people who do the approvals read my reports and say, hey, this is great. And they recommend me.
Of course.
So the recommendation part works wonders. So as effectively nowadays, I don't search for customers at all. I only have to, when somebody reach out to me, I need to maintain the relationship, make offers, discuss with them, those kind of things. But I don't actively search for new customers, although I plan to start doing that, simply to develop my business into the direction I want to. I can search for companies that do things that I'm interested in and say, hey, I want to work with you because this is specifically what I want to do, right? And then, but nowadays with my portfolio, like position in industry and so on, I am not like, it's much easier for me to reach out to those people and say, hey, I'm an expert in this field. We've been doing this for many years and I'm interested in your I want to do this. Do you want to work with me? It's a completely different message than, hey, I'm starting. Absolutely. Can you help me out? Right?
Absolutely. Yes. What would be day-to-day challenges you're facing in your work? Like some struggles that are repetitive and you just always have to...
I will surprise you significantly. You see, I am an workaholic. And with being an Asperger's perfectionist, this means that for many, many years, I worked like 12, 14 hours days, 7 days a week. There were months that I haven't talked with my wife because I would wake up and leave to work before she woke up, and I would get back after she was asleep.
Very good life in the end. Really?
Yeah, very good life. Like absolutely doing a PhD in a company at the same time, do it. You want it, you do. And so all of this for 10 years got me to a decent place, but it also made me depressed. So the biggest struggles I have right now is dealing with depression that I have.
Yeah. All right.
And so that would be it, right? Of course, I have other business friends that I meet with and we talk. And usually in business, it's like this. It's either too much work or too little work.
Yeah.
And regardless of the state, you're constantly worried. Oh, there's so much to do.
Yeah.
Or, oh no, there's too little to do, right?
But there is no sweet spot.
I have to. There will never be in a sweet spot. Right?
All right.
But what you learn is you kind of get used to it. And nowadays, it doesn't bother me as much as 5 years ago. I just accept it as a way of business.
Yeah.
And I understand that, sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little. But if you look back, everything is working just great.
Perfect. Yeah.
And then, but it came when I was starting, I had my first accountant wasn't very good. So from time to time, I would get like a letter from tax office saying, "Hey, you screw up this or that." I would have a heart attack every time I see an envelope with a stamp.
Yeah.
And now I have a good accountant, so they don't send me those letters anymore. But even if sometimes somebody sent a payment 1 day later or something, and you get a letter, I don't care. I just open it, make a photograph, send it to my accountant, and say deal with it, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of build a certain resilience toward things. So nowadays, those typical business struggles that gave me sleepless nights at the beginning,
they're
now
gone.
It's a part of life. And to be honest with you, I don't feel that apart from depression, which is a personal state, I don't really have that much things that I struggle with at the company. I have wonderful people I work with. We have good relationship with one another. We joke, have fun, and we're being highly trained in something makes your company seen as an expert in a field. This is always a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So having high skill level in something, that's great. And I we can learn new things very often. Nonlinear FEA is great because it's applicable in so many different industries. And people reach out to us and say, "Hey, we see that you're doing those awesome calculations. Can you do this for us?" And I said, I never did that before, but of course we can. Let's do it, right?
Yeah.
And then they help you because they see the value in what you're doing. So they help you to learn, and you grow crazily. Personally, not necessarily, because people very often think about growth as hiring new people. No, you just grow the competencies. You learn, and that's the beautiful part of it. So I don't feel that I struggle with day-to-day things in a company at all. Sure.
All right.
Sometimes when you have too little work, you kind of worry, there's too little work. But I have a stockpile of money. It's not that bad. If you have too much work, you're thinking oh crap, it's too much work. I have to stay longer or something.
Yeah.
But that's just how it goes, and I don't feel I'm struggling with it.
It's a cycle of business, basically, like a natural.
Yes.
Natural
and when you get used to it, it's just fine.
All right. Now, on a more technical side, doing the simulations, do you prefer open source softwares or you actually do it in licensed softwares? And how was it for you in the beginning? Especially the licensed software, expensive.
Yes, that's such a nice question. So I regret that I haven't learned open source software. The problem with open source software is that it's harder to use.
Yeah.
It's more irritating to learn. You don't have the support. There are less guides. The documentation is terrible.
Yeah.
The graphical interface is
even worse.
Very bad. It's very difficult to start. And when I was doing my PhD, my university had a Bacchus license. So I was learning how to do FEA in a Bacchus.
Yeah.
Of course, I never used it commercially. It's way too expensive.
Yeah.
But it's great, right? However, when I was working at university, a company reached out to me that they want me to write a book on nonlinear FEA for FEMAP. and they gave me a license of FEMAP, a trial license, just so I can, click around and make examples for the book.
Yeah.
And as I did that, I learned FEMAP and I got accustomed with it. And later, when I had my company, essentially it worked like this. I bought RFM, which was the first FEA program I had. It's like it's not super nonlinear FEA, or at least it wasn't back then. But I used it to design like steel structures. And then I saved up money in my company. I saved up for like 2 years maybe. And I was able to afford a single license of FEA packages.
Yeah.
I did like market research, which FEA program is the best, like cost-effective wise, because I couldn't afford the most expensive one.
Course,
Right?
of course.
So FEMAP back then had a beautiful ratio of price to quality, and I bought a license, and then when I started doing FEA, I started earning more. I bought an additional license, an additional license, and additional license. So
the cycle goes on.
So to me, the cycle goes on, and now I wouldn't shift to a open source software because that would be downgrading what I already have.
Oh yeah.
Not maybe in terms of power of calculation, but ease of use. The learning curve is so steep at the beginning that I couldn't motivate myself to learn open source.
Indeed.
However, if it would occur to me during PhD that instead of doing Abacus that my university had, I could use an open source FEA software, I could save a lot of money on license. Sure, it will be difficult at the beginning. I'm not saying it wouldn't.
But this is a part
but it
of
was
PhD.
difficult at the beginning anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then when I would start business, I would be so much more ahead.
Yeah.
So when people sign up to, for instance, for my nonlinear course, and they ask, I don't have any nonlinear solver, what to do? I always say, like, go to Calculix or Codaster with Salome Mecca and learn that. That would, if you manage to squeeze yourself enough. Yeah, if you overcome I can teach you how to do stuff, what to do and why. If you overcome the where to click to get it, this will be a benefit for lifetime. It's a benefit for lifetime because you can even go to a company and say, hey, I can do nonlinear FEA for you. And they say, we don't have a license. You say, don't worry.
Problem.
I know how to use this. We can use it. I can, I can really rise you high. And if you start your own business, you can train your people to use the software. And then you can have many people with basically free license. So open source programs have only this issue that it's extremely difficult to start.
Sure.
But if you do, it makes sense, right? Maybe they are a bit more frustrating to use. This I don't know because I don't use them.
Yeah, indeed. So do we have a workstation or you use some online servers?
I actually, funny enough, there was a time in my life when I really liked working from coffee shops.
All right.
Because I'm a coffee snob. I would like to say that I'm a coffee geek, but that would include that would point out to the fact that I know something about the coffee and I don't know anything. I just like good coffee.
All right.
So I really liked working at so I worked at a coffee shops, so I need laptops to do that. And I basically bought like Lenovo laptop hardware stations, the best I could buy to do the calculations. And this is what we work for. And I bought one for every of my employees. And funny enough, when I made the decision, the pandemic started right after the corner. So we were actually preparing to work, because I was working from coffee shops, they were working from the office from time to time. And I said, let's go everybody to work from coffee shops. It will be fun, right? And so we set it up and the pandemic hit and we was perfectly ready to, scatter to our homes and work from there because we had all the equipment. So it was a complete accident, but it must have looked like miracle. You're like, oh, we're ready for it,
Something made you have a very good intuition.
Yeah, kind of like work with coffee shops. It can save your company, man. So right now I don't work from coffee shops anymore. They are too loud for me nowadays. But and I have a good coffee at the company thanks to people in my office who know more about coffee than I do. But and they are looking at each other now and like so that would be what we're using. And I kind of when I was buying the equipment, it gradually got better and better. And every time I change computers every now and then, I simply know more of what I need. and I can precisely say I don't buy like shelf things. I go to a company and say, hey, I need a laptop based on this model, but change me this to that to this. I need more of this, less of that, and I can like configure the things based on what my experience is with hardware requirements of what I do. And at the beginning, like a good Lenovo will serve you well. And then as you progress, it's just like if you would start, I don't know, snowboarding. Any board will do at the beginning. And then as you get better and better, you kind of get a feel what you really need, right?
Yeah, indeed. Now, a little bit harder question. I hope you help us understand this part. Aside of getting the project, when you finally get it, how do you charge it? Especially in the beginning where you don't have a good feeling of your value, of how the market is at the moment. And so is it better to try to somehow calculate hourly rate and then calculate how much hour do you work and then give a fixed price, or you maybe propose an hourly rate and then let's see what happens?
Man,
or
I get a feeling that my advice will be so terrible.
it doesn't matter. Sure is.
What I do, and honest to God, I always did it this way. Usually when you get a question, people send you some sort of image of how the thing looks that you should design or whatever. Yeah. I would print the image, look at it for a few minutes and say, this much. And sometimes you're a bit too high. Sometimes you're a bit too low. On average, you're fine. Yeah. And then as the time progresses, you just know. And after, I don't know, 18 years in business, I think. I always struggle with the year count, but somewhere along those lines. I can look at the image and think of saying, this will be this much. And I can there is no process. I never do hourly rate. Mm-hmm. If you would ask me what is my hourly rate, I honestly do not know. Yeah. And frankly, if my customers ask it, I say, look, hourly rate to me as an intellectual person is a stupid concept. Imagine that there are two guys doing the same task. One guy will do it in an hour, the other guy will do it in a month. The outcome is the same, the quality is the same, and so on. I would say that when I order something online, I can pay extra to get it delivered faster. Yeah. So it's quite obvious that the guy who did it in an hour should earn more than the guy who did it in a month. But if you would calculate hourly rate, the rate of the guy who did it in a single hour would be so bonkers that you would never hire him. Yeah. So why are you asking me for this? You don't know how much input I can do in an hour. Yeah. So in my opinion, I usually do something like, hey, this is a fixed price for this project. And if there will be significant changes or we need to strengthen it and so on, I will calculate extra 30% of the price or something along those lines. Right? And this way, you're not, and I will deliver it at this date. Right? Yeah. And this way, I don't like using hourly rates because if you work fast and diligent, this works against you because you're losing with people who work slowly because your rate is higher and
makes sense.
I don't like to give hourly rates to people unless we're talking about training or stuff like that. In which case having a rate makes sense, but those are usually very, very high. So I feel that having a fixed price is better for you and for your business, although just be ready to make stupid mistakes at the beginning. I remember one project that took me, there were 6 of us at the office at the time, and it took us 2.5 months to do it.
All right.
And at the beginning, we completely misjudged how much effort that would be. And we earned less than we paid the people to do the project. We literally paid to do the job. And
you lost the money.
And of course we didn't, I don't even count my salary or anything, just the salary of the people, the cost associated with the project was higher than actually what we earned. And the next time, when I go to the same customer, I already knew that I heavily misjudged it and that I should, charge differently. So I propose something that would be a reasonable price, and that guy say, wow, why are you so much more expensive? And I said, like, mate, like the last time we misjudged so heavily that we paid to do the job. And it's like, oh, sorry, I thought that this is your typical rate. This happens, and it will happen. But I still think that overall, it's way better to do it this way than to charge per hour, especially since in the end of things, your customer will ask you, okay, how many hours do you need? And you will have to guess that anyway.
Again,
right?
again.
So,
and this was probably more professional to give a fixed amount.
In Europe, yes. In United States, people are based on hourly rates most of the time. But in Europe, fixed price would be like something people expect. They would expect
so
it. But it's good to when you're writing an offer. It's good to say, but if there will be like significant changes or something, we will you will pay extra and have some sort of idea. Talk with a customer. How do they wish to accommodate that? Because that's also important. The fixed price is fixed, but for a fixed task, you are putting a price on right now, and if something changes, this kind of like has to be addressed at some point.
Sure. So your customers come globally, basically. You don't have a restriction of Poland, basically.
No. Like most of our customers are like big abroad companies. I mean, I have Polish customers or like Polish branches of big international companies. This is how it works most of the time. So with many of my customers, I can speak in Polish. Maybe with some of my customers I can speak in Polish, but I have also international companies that simply employ us from all over the world. Yeah.
All right. Vukas, if I pronounce it properly, I think.
You actually did.
Most of my specific questions I wanted to target to get, so to say, a good insight of how cumbersome of a start will it be to open a consulting company in engineering. But maybe if you have any other additional comment or advice that you would like to share, I'd be very happy to hear.
Okay, so there is something called survivor bias. And that is a reason why you should never listen to business advice from Bill Gates, essentially. What it says is that when Bill Gates was born, there were at least 10,000 other people who was born who were equally smart, equally dedicated, and equally willing to do it, but only he succeeded. So what he did may not work for you, because it didn't work for all those other people, but it worked for him, so he thinks that it works, right? It's not that he's dishonest, it's just the fact that you do something doesn't necessarily mean that it will work, while it could work for somebody else. So be very careful with any business advice. This includes mine. Because, of course. I strongly believe, I told you the truth, and the whole of it as far as I can say, but it doesn't mean that it will work for you. It just means that it worked for me.
It's your path, basically. So
I can't be certain. I can't be certain how many other things followed the same steps and failed, essentially, right? There is no statistic on this, on how effective those advices are. So that would be the first point. Be careful about it. Without a doubt, having a developed business is great. I get to work less, travel some, I have cool people to work with. We have fun. I would never had such a wonderful life as I have now if I would be an employee somewhere, academia or business, whatever. It would just not work. So having a developed company feels great, and it makes your life, although I feel that it's more draining in a sense that you're never at home. The company is always with you. When you have some sort of worry, you sleep with it. When you work at the office, you can just leave the office and be at home. I can't leave my company. It's always there. So there are costs associated with company. Right? Maybe I wouldn't be depressed if I wouldn't have it and overworked myself so hard for years. Right? But at the same time, there are also benefits, and those are huge, and I'm not lying to it. I have a very nice office, good coffee, and it's fun. Right? So having a business is great, although starting a company is challenging at best. And it's good to start a company early on, I feel, because there will be no better time in life to risk it. Because starting a company is a risk. At least this is what I think. Like, I can't honestly say it was a risk for me because it worked. So where's the risk? It's like guaranteed, right? But at the same time, I feel that starting a company is a big risk. If you have a family you have to feed, this risk might be too high to take.
Yeah.
When I left university, I already had 2 kids. Now I have 4. If I stayed back then at university, I'm not sure if I'm courageous enough to leave university now, as I have 4 kids.
Yeah.
So there is time in your life to take risks.
Yeah.
And I feel that the older you get, the more risky it becomes, mostly because you have more and more obligations.
Yeah.
When I was a student, I basically could eat like 2 tacos a day and, sleep somewhere and be kind of okay. So I needed very little money to sustain my life. Yeah. With 4 kids, all the ballet classes, English classes, whatever, and like all the requirements of the family, I couldn't pull this off. Yeah, like you can't bootstrap a family life, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? So starting early is good, mostly because if it doesn't pan out, you can always find a job, and you still have time, right?
Yeah.
And if you start a company and fail while a lot of other people and obligations depend on you. This is where the troubles start.
Yeah.
So risking early makes sense to me. Sure, one could say, oh, you don't have as much experience and so on. That's true. So finding somebody who can help you out is also important.
Yeah.
Right? I think this is the main reason why I have office hours in my course. So people, like I had a father I could call to. That's a very rare circumstance that my father not only has a PhD in engineering, he's also a businessman.
Yeah.
So he could give me all the good advice.
Yeah.
Right. So having somebody you can ask makes sense. But apart from that, just like if you're in a relationship talking with your significant other and say, hey, I plan this. Are you okay with this? That's also important because, starting a business is a decision that touches not only you. It touches the people who potentially will have to sustain your life when you're not earning stuff and so on. And I often say that my wife is at least in a big amount responsible for my success, mostly because when I was earning nothing, she was providing for us so I can risk it more. Because if I was the guy earning money, I would have to shut down my business after, 6 months and go to work because you would starve otherwise. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a family decision to start a business. And if it succeeds, then it's great. If it's not, at least you had a good run, you learned something, you tried something, and you move on. And figuring out what would be the ideal of working, that would be cool. Like how much do you want to work? And let's be honest, at the beginning is as much as you can, most likely, because you will have so little money to earn that you'll take a lot of work for little money just to start. But I feel that this is where I failed personally, and I worked way too much, and I missed many things that are important in my life because of that. And now I'm for a personal level. Now I am way better than that. But maybe if I had a better sense of that, my life would be more whole in some sense. But at the same time, would I be as successful if I would not work this? There is a very difficult equilibrium there. But it's good to be aware of it. And having some savings, if you don't have any significant other that earn money or you don't have a salary, having some savings would be nice. I wouldn't definitely do something like this. I will drop out of university this day and start a company this day, hoping for the best. It's good to have like a grace period. When you still work at university, you run your company and you start seeing the customers. And sure, bit by bit. If you get a job, this means you work nights because at days you're at uni, right? But it's a cost. But it's like
it's a
this makes you. Yes, it's like insurance in some sense. That if you don't get a customer, you still have money to eat and live somewhere. But if you get a customer, long nights are coming. But as you get customers more and more regularly, you can think, okay, maybe I don't need the university anymore.
Yeah.
Or some other work or some
Any
other income type.
stability
right?
point. Let's say.
Yeah. And, I know people who are much more risk tolerant than I am. I have very low tolerance for risk when it comes to life. So I guess that I overdrag the needed of safety, and I worked at university way longer than I needed in some sense from a safety reason.
Yeah.
So you can have too little of safety and you can be in the middle. Just being like realizing what is your profile also helps because you can say, oh yeah, this is where I'm at. Maybe I am overestimated in this way, that way, to think about it. But having some sort of income as you start, or at least a stockpile of money that can sustain you for some time would be nice. And if I would have no significant other, no family help, I would at least want to have 6 months, maybe even 12 months of savings of life to start a business.
Yes.
Because in a year you will have like a decent feel of how things are going, I'd say. I would think the year is enough. But having the savings is important because otherwise you
the
might be too desperate. That's one. But also, if I've been in business long enough to recognize where people are desperate. And that's a very bad negotiation position.
Oh, yes.
If you are desperate for a job, you can be abused very badly. And let's be honest, like business people are nice, and I have a lot of friends throughout my customers. But I met in the past people I don't work with right now that abused me simply because they could.
Yeah.
And you can be this business shark, getting all the occasions that you can, and you would be just like a shark food in some sense if you're desperate. So having those savings just to be able to say no.
Yeah.
From time to time, when the tough things get tough, it's important. But if you can rely on, a significant other help or family help or something else, it's easier. With savings, it's always more difficult. But having them at least would be reasonable. So yeah, and I think
amazing.
I think that would be it.
It was a very interesting and resourceful talk. I hope it helps also others, not only us.
Yeah, I hope so too. I feel that many people are thinking about starting a company because in some sense, at some point, that's a thought that occurs to people. Sometimes it's a bit too late, but sometimes it's okay. And I enjoy having a company. It's fun,
It's
but
also
I know
a
people.
super specific journey.
Yes, mine definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I know people who had their company and they went broke, or they simply quit because the stress was too high and they find a job to work in. So, you never know how this will lead.
Yeah,
but,
how do you respond to this?
Yeah, but I don't think that I would ever regret trying, because usually you regret things you haven't tried.
Of course. Yeah.
But that could be said about anything, and most of those things would be very dangerous. So I am very reluctant to give advice like this on the internet.
All right, I love adrenaline.
Yeah, that would be it.
But,
I'm very adrenaline averse. So.
All right. So to conclude it, thank you again one more time very much, and we hope to see other of your content on web, and maybe just to come back in contact.
Of course, let me know how, what you will choose, how it will work. I'm always curious, and I really cheer you on. I hope that this will be a wonderful success, whatever you will choose, that it will beautifully work for you, because that would be lovely. And I'm always happy when people, get successful and stuff. That's so cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I wish you a nice day and a lot of fun with the pictures that your colleagues present.
Okay. So have a lovely day too. Take care.
Bye-bye.